Welcome in. It is the Northside Baseball Podcast. He is Jason Ross. I am Mitch Widmeyer, talking anything and everything Chicago Cubs baseball. However you get your podcast, we always appreciate you tuning in. Maybe it's via our website. Check out Northside Baseball, our YouTube channel, Northside Baseball as well, or maybe via Apple Podcast or a variety of other ways. If you're watching via video, you can see the topics to the right. Jason, always appreciative of your time. A little bit of a change up for us this week. We are recording on a Monday for a Tuesday published Cubs off Monday before they get rocking and rolling to finish up the first half of the season on Tuesday. You got the Twins, the Yankees, both on the road, and then the All-Star break. A lot of topics to dive into today. I thought it'd be kind of fitting since we're recording on Monday and it's an off day for the Cubs to kind of look back at the series against St. Louis, specifically the game on Sunday night. Matthew Boyd, I mean, we now can call him Matthew Boyd the All-Star for the first time, and I think it's really cool. He's either in his 11th or 12th year. It's 11th or 12th year, but first time All-Star 11 or 12 years into your career is pretty unheard of, and it shows how damn good he's been this year and how damn healthy he's been. That's kind of been the thing that's plagued him throughout his career. And you just start to look at things with Boyd and a 2-year, $29 million deal inked in the offseason, and that is starting to look like one hell of a bargain that the Cubs got with Boyd. And I know we talked about it a couple weeks ago, and I think I phrased it as him sort of being the glue guy for the rotation. I think even saying that doesn't do it enough justice. Like, the guy's just been incredible, and he shoved again on Sunday night against the Cardinals. He said in his post-game presser, he's just so thankful to be a Chicago Cub. This is going to be a dude that he's going to want the ball should you make the postseason in a game 2 or a game 3, and really he's earned that trust throughout this first half of the season. His pitching run value is in the 86th percentile. His fastball run value is in the 92nd percentile. Matthew Boyd has just been incredible, and to me, it's a well-earned all-star nod. I think for people who maybe haven't watched the Cubs this year, aren't Cubs fans, they'll see Matthew Boyd and they'll be like, oh, Matthew Boyd, he's always been pretty good, but he's an all-star this year. And then you look at the resume and what he's put together, and it's more than deserving for the veteran left-hander. What are your thoughts on Boyd being an all-star, his game on Sunday? Anything else you want to throw in?
I don't know if you remember this, but a couple weeks ago, I had kind of a little bit tongue-in-cheek brought up Matthew Boyd as a potential all-star, just talking about his ERA.
You did.
I didn't really think that we would actually be having this conversation about him. And it is his 11th season. I went and I did the quick
11th.
math.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and so I'll give myself some flowers for a couple weeks saying that it was on the cards. At the same time, I'm going to also admit when they originally signed him, I wasn't that excited about it. I was actually kind of down on it. I didn't really understand it. I went into the season thinking that this couldn't possibly be your best starting pitcher addition. I had a lot of concerns about the kind of longevity. I think once I took a step back then, my first emotions were one way. And then my second emotions were, yeah, but all the injuries are kind of tied to the Tommy John surgery. And he had the Tommy John. He was really good in Cleveland. Maybe I'm not giving him enough credit. So, when I was looking into Matthew Boyd before we came to talk about it today, there's lots of things we could talk about. The thing that stood out the most for me was only 23 pitchers have thrown more innings than Matthew Boyd this year. That is, for somebody who we worried about his longevity coming into the season, and he's been in a season where Justin Steele goes down right away. May into June, you lose Shota Imanaga for a month. He kind of had to be the guy for a little bit of time, kind of running with a rotation of 2 rookies, Colin Ray, Jamison Tyon. Like, none of those guys could be the guy, but Matthew Boyd's been the guy. We'll talk a little bit about some guys maybe who, maybe got snubbed or robbed of an all-star nod. Matthew Boyd may be a little lucky to make the all-star if we're being honest with ourselves, kind of looking at things. You've got like Rangers Suarez and Sanchez from the Phillies, who, you could argue have a little bit better ERA, maybe have a little bit better FWAR. I think in the end that those guys will probably end up making it with like Chris Sale, who's not going to be there. A couple of things like that. So, maybe a little lucky to be announced initially, but I think he would have been announced regardless anyways. That doesn't take away, I think, the big season that he's had. He's 19th in FWAR, he's 10th in ERA, and that's way better than, I think, even if you were positive about Matthew Boyd coming into the season, even if you said, I love this signing, I don't think that you had anything like this on the docket. So I think he's overperformed from anybody's standpoint. He's definitely overperformed from my original standpoint. I always try to admit when I'm wrong, and usually when I'm wrong about something, it's like this, right? Like, I didn't like it, and then he was good, so me being wrong is a good thing. Like, I kind of always root for myself to be wrong in those situations because, if I'm right, then nobody wins. If I'm wrong, everybody wins. So we might as well be wrong there. Matthew Boyd's been fantastic. He was phenomenal last night. I loved the emotion that he showed after he struck guys out. He was in the game even when the score was big. And he was jazzed to be there. So thought he pitched really well last night. Thought he's pitched really well this season. I don't see him slowing down necessarily. I know, with somebody like Cade Horton or Ben Brown, you got to kind of limit the innings a little bit. Matthew Boyd's 34 years old. He's been around the league for a while. I don't think that you have to limit his innings as much. And, from a dystopian maybe kind of point of view of it, you have him for 2 years. He's fresh off of a Tommy John surgery. It's not like Cade Horton, who's like 22, 23. Coming up, you've got him for 6 years, 7 years actually, really, with the service time, and you maybe have a little bit more invested long term in a Cade Horton than a Matthew Boyd. I hate saying that because he's a human being, but from a Cubs point of view, I think you can probably maybe run him a little bit more. And he's just more physically gifted. As a 34-year-old, he's just physically mature. But I thought he's been great. I've been super excited about him. I like him a lot. And just as a person, I like him more than I really realized it. I enjoy his personality. I like that he really likes to be here. And I think every baseball player says those kinds of things. But he does seem very genuine about it.
Very genuine.
Yeah, he feels very genuine about it. So great signing. Whether that's a Zombro or a Hoyer or a Carter or a collaboration of everybody. I think the Cubs are starting to get a little bit of a reputation of maybe a team who can find some guys like this. If you just look at everybody they brought in, and the misses are small, but the hits are big. I've been really, really excited about Matthew Boyd. I like to see him take the mound all the time, and I just didn't think that in January, when it happened, December, because they jumped kind of the market on it, that it would happen. This feels like I don't know if you remember this, Mitch, but when the Cubs jumped the market and they signed Tyler Chatwood, many years ago, they kind of jumped the market. They got him for a little bit cheaper than some of the other market was, and he was terrible. This kind of feels like what that would have looked like had it gone right. You jump the market you take a little bit of a gamble. Chatwood was a gamble coming out of Colorado on the stuff and the age. Boyd, I think, more on the last 50 innings that he showed on Cleveland. But this kind of feels like that's what you kind of hope for when you do that. So credit to everybody for getting it done and nailing it.
Yeah, when they made the signing, I was in a similar boat. I would say maybe to a lesser degree than you. Like, I was okay with the signing. I wasn't like, holy crap, they got Matthew Boyd, let's go. My big thing was like, it's a guy who, like you mentioned the Tommy John, but he's had numerous other injuries or multiple other injuries throughout his career. Like, he's just a guy that hasn't been able to stay healthy, which sucks for him. Like, you can't blame him for that. But when they made the signing, my first thought was like, what exactly, like, how many starts, how many innings are we going to get out of this guy? And I hate saying it, but you almost at this point, you just keep your fingers crossed the rest of the way that he stays healthy, because really, had you told me back in, March, I guess, with the Tokyo series, but had you told me before the start of the year, Jason, like, hey, the Cubs are going to enter the All-Star break and Matthew Boyd will have been by far the best starter the Cubs had when you factor in everything, the injuries to Steele, the injury, Showed to me is still the best pitcher, but if we're talking about for this first half, what they brought to the table, Showed missed a big part of that with his own injury. I would have thought things that had gone pretty south for the Cubs if you're talking about entering the All-Star break, and Matthew Boyd has been by far the most reliable starting pitcher in the rotation, but it's the exact opposite, and he's been just so good. And the Cubs, like you said, they're starting to build somewhat of a reputation for hitting on guys like Matthew Boyd. And you look at some of these big moves that they have, or I guess guys who are contributing heavily, and a lot of them are trades or free agent signings, like Kyle Tucker was a trade. Pete Crow Armstrong was a trade. Matthew Boyd, free agency, so on and so forth. Bringing in guys like Seiya Suzuki and Shota Imanaga, and neither of those guys were the headliners at their position for when they were signed in coming over to the majors, and both have worked out really, really well. So I do think the brain trust, for the Cubs deserves plenty of credit for some of these moves. And like we said, 2 years, $29 million for Boyd is starting to look like quite the bargain.
Absolute steal.
Yeah, the offense, for the most part, has kept it humming for the Cubs. I guess, I want to talk about the game with 8 home runs, the 8-homer game for the Cubs against St. Louis.
Cathartic.
Yeah, I think
it was cathartic.
You have an 8-homer game, you set the franchise record. It's awesome. You do it on July 4th. It's pretty cool. It adds another, element to it. You do it against your rival in the St. Louis Cardinals. It's just like one of those, chef's kiss moments. Like, it's just all of that combined coming together is pretty cool. And it was 3 from Michael Busch, 2 from PCA, 1 from Dansby, 1 from Kelly, 1 from Seiya Suzuki. I mean, Busch clubbed one of his 3 off a lefty. PCA said after the game in his post-game interview, I don't know if he was talking about including his college days, high school. It's hard to do that. Some of the minor league teams he's played on, but he said this is the best offense he's ever been a part of. Obviously, if he's just including his major league career, it's a no doubter that would be his answer. It is funny, they beat the Guardians 1-0 the day before they had this 8-homer game.
Baseball.
July. Yes.
Baseball's weird, man. You play 162 games, weird things happen.
I know, but it's this offense has been good throughout the first half, really, really good. Obviously, they're topping the marks in a lot of categories, or right near the top across baseball. But to me, there was nothing leading into this game. I know weather, wind plays a factor, who you're going up against, but they had just had a 1-0 claw it out, scratch out a run type win over Cleveland. And then the next day, 8 homers against the Cardinals in a win. It's just, and like I said, Busch hit one off a lefty, which we know his struggles have been identified against lefties so far this year. So I thought that was pretty cool. And then the last part that I wanted to include, I don't know if you saw this. This was just so weird to me. Baseball type thing.
Is it the Michael Busch?
Yeah. So he's the 3rd Cubs player to homer 3 times against the Cardinals. And the other 2 also came on July 4th.
Yeah, Hank Lieber and Moises Alou.
Yeah, Moises.
Yeah, I've got that one written down too. That's one of my favorite stats.
I was like, that's insane. You can't script that. The odds are so crazy.
You can't. Baseball is a weird sport. When you play 162 games and you play you play as many innings and as many at bats as you do, just weird stuff happens. The 1-0 game, and then the franchise record for home runs. The fact that if a Cub's going to hit 3 home runs against the Cardinals, it has to happen on July 4th. It's just especially, I think what makes that even weirder is that there were all those years where they were playing the Cardinals 21 times a year. And they had some guys who could hit 3 home runs in a game. Chris Bryant could hit 3 home runs in a game. Kyle Schwarber could hit 3 home runs in a game. Javi Baez could hit 3 home runs in a game.
A lot of guys.
Nothing. Right. Didn't do it. Sammy Sosa could hit 3 home runs in a game. He could hit what felt like sometimes 3 home runs in an inning. When during the steroid era, he didn't do it. So it's kind of crazy. It was really fun. It was July 4th, this afternoon game at Wrigley, and I was excited to watch the game. Being a teacher and in my everyday life, I'm off right now, so I love afternoon games. They give me something to do sometimes at 2 p.m. on a Friday. But it was nice, just kind of you turn that game on and it just you didn't have to worry about it. I mean, just immediately they were just teeing off of Michaelis, which I got no problem with that. He's not my favorite. He's not my favorite person. But I mean, it was even in the first inning, the outs that they had against him were 100 miles an hour, 95 miles an hour. They were crushing
on a
him.
tee.
And I don't know if you caught it, but my favorite moment was, they're interviewing Oliver Marmol in the middle of the game, and they were basically what do you think is going on with Michaelis? And he was like, well, he's gonna have to wear it. Ooh, that's rough, man. That was when you knew it was oh, buddy, you don't even know what's coming.
Yeah.
It's I didn't, I guess I guess maybe he could foreshadow the rest of the weekend because they got absolutely toasted again last night. And need the bullpen, but yeah, they crushed them. I mean, and even like the game that they blew, they still scored 5 runs. They still put up pretty good offense.
Yeah.
It was a lot of fun. I love games like that. It's always fun to be able to say that you saw it. It's more fun when you're there, but it's good to say you saw it. So yeah, perfect day for a Friday home run bonanza at Wrigley.
Yeah, you brought up the Marmol when he was mic'd up. I don't know if you probably did. Sunday Night Baseball last night, when the shortstop for the Cardinals, they had him mic'd up when he was in the field,
Yeah.
bottom of the third, and the Cubs had a
that long
5-run bottom
inning.
third, and he had a line that I thought was really. I just thought it was cool. It made him like really personable. It's got to be somewhat awkward for both the broadcasters and Wynn. Like, you're talking to him, you're chopping it up while he's playing in the field, and he's watching his pitcher just get shelled. And at one point, Wynn said, "Man, been out." He said something. I'm slightly paraphrasing, but he said like, "Man, been out here for a while. I'm really starting to get to know you guys well." And I just thought it was really funny. It was like he was able to make
a good personality.
Make a little lighthearted moment out of a pretty rough ending for his team. I was listening to, so I was out on a walk last night. So the first 2 innings, I had the AirPods in, and I was listening to Pat call the game on the radio. And I didn't know this until he brought it up. They were talking about the 8-homer game, and there was a picture that the Cubs put out on their social media channels of all 5 players who homered in the game because it set a franchise record.
Yeah.
And Pat says that none of the players knew why they were gathered for that photo, and that I think he said it was Dansby had asked someone like, "Oh, what was that for?" afterwards, and then they were told like, "You guys just set a franchise record for 8 homers a game." So they posed for this photo like behind home plate afterwards, and apparently either Dansby or none of the guys, or maybe a couple didn't know why the picture was even being taken.
They must have missed the scoreboard, because I know that's
a picture of
the scoreboard.
Yes,
it was up out there.
Yes, so that's why I was like, dang, I thought they had put that out on the scoreboard during the game. So Pat was talking about that on Sunday night's broadcast on the radio when I was listening to the first couple innings. I thought that was pretty funny as well. But
I like stuff like that.
It's crazy. It was a good stretch. You mentioned too, like the offense was even fine in the game they blew. That kind of came down to a couple guys that, if we want to tail off a little bit here for a couple minutes, Drew, you were telling me off the air a funny story about Pomeranz and Brad Keller, but 2 guys who have just been nails this year. And
they've been nails,
especially a guy in Keller who, like, you look at you take a deep dive into his numbers, and he's been phenomenal, and it's backed up by what the data says. They just both struggled.
Yeah. We all have them. I guess bad games happen. Brad Keller was bound to have a bad one. As great as he's been, probably a good reminder. His career hasn't been like, he hasn't had like a long stretch of being like the most elite human being. And relievers are kind of volatile and weird like that, anyways. I was talking to somebody who would, just to kind of do a little bit of a tangent, but I had been talking to somebody on Northside about somebody had complained about like Daniel Palencia, who we're going to talk about later, and how he wished we had a closer who just like made it easy, and was like, well, they all struggle like this. Like, this is relievers. We saw Josh Hader, the weekend prior to this, and I mean, he gave up like 1-line drive to Ian Happ, and then was like absolute, like, just floored in a full save situation. If you look back to the 3 of his last 4 appearances, he gave up like multiple runs, the Angels and the A's, like the best relievers in baseball. I mean, Josh Hader's going to the All-Star game. He's been one of the best relievers in baseball for, better part of a decade now. And, he's given up 2 runs to the Los Angeles Angels. He's given up multiple. He's given up a run to the Oakland, to the Sacramento AAA, whatever, A's. So like these things just happen. Brad Keller was bound to have a bad one, and he just didn't have it. And I guess as a reliever, when you don't have it, you really don't have it, because he couldn't locate the slider. That 3-run home run to Pozol, that's what it is. God, that guy. To talk about this. Speaking of funny listings, the MLB had him listed at like 5'11", 210.
Wow.
That is listen, no shame. The guy is not, that's not his size. My eye scales can tell you that much. We all have our own shapes, but I don't think he's that size. But yeah, I mean, he hit that pretty hard off of Keller. It was a bomb.
Yeah, they'll be fine. Sample
Yeah, he'll
size
be
tells
okay.
us that at least, or you would
Yeah.
hope. So, two guys, by the way, Northside Baseball Podcast. He is Jason Ross. I'm Mitch Woodmeyer. However you get your podcast, always appreciative for you giving us a listen or giving us a watch. However, you're tuning in. So the Cubs get 3 All-Stars: Kyle Tucker, Pete Crow Armstrong starters, Matthew Boyd named as a reserve. Every year it's brought up snubs. Who are the biggest snubs? You even see I saw Fox Sports MLB's X account tweeted out they're embracing it, hey, who are the biggest snubs? Here's our list, and who's yours, and stuff like that. From a Cubs perspective, I think 2 names come to mind in Seiya Suzuki and Michael Busch. I'll defer to you, but I'll just say, Busch has had a really good year. And, we went in depth for, I think, around 15 minutes about the season Busch has had last week, Jason. And he's had a really good year. He's been red hot lately. Seiya, to me, was probably the bigger omission of the two. I just with the year he's already set a career high in RBI. And I know you can't, compare what he was last year, the year before that, to this year and base that for him being an all-star. But you even look league-wide, he's leading the league in RBI. He smacked another solo shot on Sunday night against St. Louis. And it's tough because I get Ohtani's the starting DH and Schwarber was named as the reserve. And obviously he's primarily a designated hitter for Philadelphia. And those two are both more than deserving. I know it can be a numbers crunch. It's hard for me to wrap my mind around Seiya being left off the list. And I know some people, I just kind of scanning around social media, it always brings up the question of should we keep doing this thing every year where each team gets a representative? I still say yes. I think it's a cool element of the game. And unless you really love baseball, if you're a Rockies fan this year, why else would you tune into the All-Star game? But now you're hey, Hunter Goodman might get in a bat late in the game or something like that in a big spot, and you want to watch your guy. So I still like that every team gets a representative. I think it's a cool part of it. There's always going to be snubs as a result of that. There's going to be snubs in general. But Seiya to me is a pretty noticeable one. And I think that can be backed up when looking at some of these main accounts and people are, replying with who they thought the biggest snub was. And a lot of people that weren't Cubs fans, when I would give a click to their profile, were saying Seiya. So I don't know what you think about, though. I don't know if robbed, that's how I headlined it on our little rundown. I don't know if robbed is too strong of a word, but if you want to use the word snub, to me, Seiya Suzuki was definitely snubbed.
So I went in, actually, I went pretty in depth with my thoughts here. So
love that.
I'll start with Michael Busch. I'll get to say a second, and then I will finish it with a third.
Okay.
So I'm going to add a third one in here.
Yeah.
Michael Busch got squeezed due to timing. That's exactly what happened to him. So I went through it. So Freddie Freeman got voted in as the starter, and the very first fan vote got delivered. And if you look today, Freddie Freeman is 4th in MLB F4 for first baseman. So your first thought would be, well, Michael Busch is 3rd right now. Michael Busch got snubbed for Freddie Freeman. He doesn't deserve to be there. But we have to remember the fan vote. If we look at the fan vote, the very first leaderboard got put out on June 16th. Freddie Freeman was easily winning, 350,000 votes, not clear of second place. But he had a 161 WRC plus right then. He was the second best first baseman in the league. He was tied, just fractional F4 behind Pete Alonso. It was an easy 1-2 vote. And then he went on a 3-week slump directly after that. But those votes still count. They don't erase the votes. So Freddie Freeman wins the fan vote because he was amazing for 2.5 months. Then he had bad 3 weeks. And everybody has bad 3 weeks. Then, if you look as recently as Thursday, Michael Busch was the 7th in F4 because he went bananas over the weekend. So, he goes bananas over the weekends. He's at his max point right now where he's the 3rd highest F4 first baseman. But, I think that's a little misleading. He hasn't hit against lefties, and I know he hit a couple home runs against. He hit a home run against lefty. He hit a couple of hits against lefties. He looked pretty good against lefties over the weekend. I don't expect that's going to stick. I think if you played against all the toughest lefties in baseball, his numbers are lower than that. So I think Michael Busch, uh, Alonso and Olsen got in, and they are number 1 and number 2 in F4. So if one of those three wasn't going to make it because Freddie Freeman won the fan vote, well, Michael Busch is the clearly odd guy out, and it's in Atlanta, so you kind of defer a little bit to Olsen, anyways, right? He's in Atlanta, he's from Atlanta, he's born in Atlanta. I'm fine with that. I know Michael Busch. Seiya Suzuki is the big one that people want, and I am again going to say I don't think he got robbed. And that is because if we look at when the selections were being made, he's behind Ohtani and Schwarber at DH. So you can't have 3 DHs on the team. But then you can say, okay, well, Ohtani, Schwarber's kind of an outfielder, Suzuki's kind of an outfielder. What if maybe the Miami Marlins getting Kyle Stowers in there is what knocked Seiya Suzuki out? Well, going into yesterday, Kyle Stowers had the same F4 as Ohtani, as Suzuki, and he had a slightly better WRC plus. So he's been worth more and was a slightly better hitter. Now, Suzuki hit a home run last night. That changes, but they have to announce the teams at some point, right? So I actually do not think Michael Busch or Seiya Suzuki got squeezed. I think it's a bad year to be an NL hitter. That's really what it is. If Michael Busch is in the AL, he's starting at first base. If Seiya Suzuki is in the AL, he's starting at DH. Like Ryan O'Hearn, cool, but I'm sorry. Like these guys have been better hitters.
Yeah.
The snub is Carson Kelly, right? The snub is Carson Kelly, and we can say here's the difference between Carson Kelly and Seiya Suzuki, because the argument's going to be Colorado needs somebody, so you have to put Hunter Goodman. Hunter Goodman has to be in. Hunter Goodman right now is the 9th best hitting catcher in baseball. Carson Kelly is 4th. Carson Kelly is 4th in F4. Hunter Goodman is reschedule it 9th again. So Carson Kelly got snubbed, and it's not that Goodman's been better. But here's the thing. If you want to say the Rockies need somebody, they have Jake Bird, who's the 9th best reliever in baseball right now. Put Jake Bird in the game. Jake Bird's been phenomenal. He's awesome.
You want him on the Cubbies?
I want Jake Bird on the Cubs. Absolutely. I love Jake Bird. But Jake Bird is your Rockies, and then Carson Kelly goes to the game. And I know people are going to say, well, he had the big start and then he kind of wasn't good, but he's been pretty good. Even like take out yesterday, he had been good up until then. He started to turn the corner again about a week and a half ago. We all have slumps. So if his slump doesn't count, Freddie Freeman has a slump, he's starting the game. So the snub that I have is Carson Kelly, because I can find an argument to find somebody else. I don't have an argument to put another Marlin in the game. I can't find another Marlin who deserves to be in the game. Kyle Stowers can beat Seiya Suzuki. Seiya Suzuki's had a great year. He gets squeezed on a number game. Carson Kelly deserves to be in the All-Star game, which is crazy because the two, signings that I think people had the most issue with, at least that I talked to who had the most issue with, was Carson Kelly. People wanted Danny Jansen. I wasn't as big a Danny Jansen guy as some other people, but they wanted Danny Jansen over Carson Kelly. And then people were upset about Matthew Boyd. And I think that those guys should probably both be in the All-Star game right now. And I hate saying that because I think from a pure fan standpoint, I think the Cubs have been good enough that they deserve more than 3 All-Stars. I think you could make arguments for Nico Horner, for Seiya Suzuki, for Michael Busch, and Carson Kelly. But the strongest argument that I can make is from Carson Kelly's standpoint, because not only do I think he has been the 2nd best NL catcher, if you're looking at the NL catchers, you've got Will Smith, who's 2nd, you've got Carson Kelly, who's 5th in FWAR. There's nobody in between there, NL catcher. And then you have to go down to, even Drake Baldwin over with the Braves has a higher FWAR than Hunter Goodman. I struggle a little bit on that, and I can find a reserve for the Rockies. So they still get represented with Jake Bird, who I think, is an all-star. He's pitched like an all-star. So everybody's happy with it. That's the way I've looked at it. Because I know, but the fan in me just wants 7 Cubs all-stars like in 2016, where you looked at the lineup and it was the top 4 hitters in the lineup were basically Cubs, which is a really cool year, and those are always kind of fun. So it's fan me thinks that Michael Busch and Seiya Suzuki got kind of squeezed out from the numbers, but I think logical me understands why. Carson Kelly is the person that I would argue has the biggest gripe today.
Are you? I don't know if I've asked you this. Are you with or not with the every team should get a representative at the All-Star game?
I think
Like
every team
I'm
should
cool
get.
with it.
It's a game for the fans and a
Yep.
game for the players, and I think every team should be represented. I love the fact that they went back. This is my. I'm a big uniform guy. I love that they went back to everybody wearing their own uniforms, type of a thing. I don't really watch the All-Star game. I'll kind of put it on in the background. Maybe the same thing with the home run derby. But I do that more than any of the other sports, like the NFL. I got a big Eagles.
Now.
I got a big Eagles helmet right back there for anybody who's watching on YouTube and can watch the stream of it. I'm a big Eagles fan, and God, you couldn't pay me enough to watch any of the Pro Bowl nonsense. There's 0% chance I'm watching that. I'm a big Philadelphia Flyers fan. No, I'm not going to watch NHL players glorified like play 3-on-3 nonsense. It's awful.
And now the NBA just keeps trying to change it. This year they split it into 3 teams. Next year they already announced it's going to be Team USA against Team World. Just
they're going back to that one.
To try to figure out.
The NHL does that sometimes too.
Yeah,
it's dumb.
Baseball's the most.
It's the closest to an actual game.
Yeah, it's the only one that is not an eyesore.
Yeah, it's the closest to an actual game. So I do think that every team should be there. It's for the fans. It's for the players. It very rarely can you find a team with a player who you couldn't argue deserves it. It's pretty hard. I mean, the Rockies are arguably the worst team that we have ever seen, right? They're pathetic. And I could find 2 All-Stars on that team who you can make strong arguments. Hunter Goodman, it's not like he's been bad. He's got 16 home runs from the catcher position. He's got a 119 WRC plus. Any other season, this guy's probably starting for the NL at catcher. Jake Bird has been phenomenal. And they're the worst team that we could imagine. And they have 2 really good baseball players. So I think that's why I don't mind that every team has one. It's for the fans, and it's really hard to find a team that doesn't have somebody that you can't kind of like make an argument.
That's what I'm saying. There's usually there's usually never a year where you are scratching for that one team that gets represented. And it's just like, wow, they absolutely should not be. Like, you can usually make a case for one guy on every team.
Yeah. If we can make an argument for 2 guys on the worst team ever, we can probably find one guy every year from every team.
I agree. Northside Baseball Podcast, Jason Ross, Mitch Widmeyer here with you. This is a segment we do every week. It floods me with as much information as it does the listener or those watching. The minor league report. Haven't heard about your boy Ivan in a couple updates. I don't know if he's been doing anything down there or not.
No, he's been terrible lately.
Yeah,
he's been bad.
The floor is yours again.
He's been bad. Yeah, so we've got a trade deadline special today. So that's the theme. I always try to, I don't know, I guess I try to come up with a theme of my minor league report when you have 4 affiliates plus DSL stuff. It becomes very hard to find enough, very easy to find enough things to talk about. Very hard to kind of limit yourself. So theme today is going to be trade deadline special because we're going to say goodbye to some of these guys, and I think maybe sooner than we realize, especially with the Jamison Tyon injury. I have a sneaking suspicion that that we could, even before we record again, like we can maybe see one go. I think that the Cubs are going to look for a starting pitcher probably sooner rather than later. So let's talk let's talk trade deadline. Owen Casey absolutely on fire right now. He had a 280 WRC plus last week, hit 4 home runs. And the biggest thing, he struck out 10% of the time last week. Now, I will give a little bit of a caveat. He was sick at the beginning of the week. He only played 4 games. But if we take it back to 100 plate appearances, 20% K percentage. He's really dipped his strikeout rate over the course of the last 100 at bats. He's making more contact. He's swinging more often. And he's one of only 3 hitters in minor leagues who's under 23 who has 15 home runs at this point of the year. The power's really coming around. If I was another team and I believed his defense was real, and I'll tell you from a personal standpoint, I do think he is an outfielder for the next handful of years. He is much more athletic than people give him credit for his size. He's got a 60 grade arm. You can stick him in right field. He's not going to kill you. That would be a guy that I would really like. Kevin Alcantara has turned it on a lot recently, specifically on curveballs, which is awesome. Still can't hit a slider. I mean, you throw this guy a slider, he's got nothing right now. But you throw him a curveball, he's hitting it a lot better. He had a 20% K rate. He hit a couple home runs last week. He's been on fire for about 3 weeks now. Again, if you're a team and you are looking for a center fielder, I think Kevin Alcantara is right there. He's 6'6" and he can play a 55 grade center field. So when a lot of times when you see scouting grades, they do it on a weird scale. It's the 20-80 scale, 20 being the worst, 80 being the best, and then every 5 in there is like a standard deviation. 45 to 50, like 50 is usually considered major league average. That means that he is like probably, I would give him a slight grade above a major league average center fielder. So he's going to be a positive center fielder, and he's 6'6", which is, you don't see that. Most 6'6" guys are corner guys. I think once you put him in a corner outfield, if you want to put him in a corner, he probably bumps up to like a 60, 65 grade outfielder at like a right field. He's probably going to win a Gold Glove in right field. I think his glove is that good. But if you wanted a center fielder, Kevin Alcantara is kind of like a unicorn in that aspect. So him hitting really well is great. Jonathan Long had gone through a slump. He's back. He hit 4 home runs last week, 243 WRC plus, and he played third base yesterday. So whether that's the Cubs maybe showcasing him, or that is a situation where the Cubs are thinking about bringing him up as the bench. We talked last week about how terrible the bench is.
Still is.
Brujan still is. God, they're terrible. Hey, but John Birdie can pitch in relief. So but it's still terrible, right? It's horrible. So you got those guys. Ben Brown is kind of an interesting one. I think in the right deal. I think he's available. I don't think the Cubs want to move him, but I think he's available. He pitched for the first time since he got sent down. He hasn't been hurt. It's load management. I was a little bummed out by his appearance last night. I didn't get to watch it, but I did go check some of the StatCast data. I don't have full StatCast data. StatCast died for like the 3rd and the 4th inning. So there's a lot of undescript pitches, but in the stuff that I saw, he didn't throw a single changeup. And I was bummed out about that. I was kind of hoping the time off, Cubs had sent him back to Iowa, he'd work on a 3rd pitch. He didn't. He didn't have a great game. It wasn't a terrible game. You could tell he hadn't pitched for a week and a half. He had been probably relaxing, maybe threw a bullpen off to the side. So he didn't have a great game. It wasn't a terrible game. He didn't get roughed up. He gave up 1 run, walked a guy. I don't think he had any strikeouts. But just working back in. Jackson Wiggins, if you're looking for another one of our top pitching prospects, he's not pitched for the last couple of weeks. Again, it's a load management thing. He's perfectly fine. He's going to pitch in the futures game. Which if you want my prospect upsettedness, they changed the futures game this year. This is where I'm upset about the All-Star game. Futures game used to be 9 innings. They dropped it to 7 so that they could ensure to get the celebrity softball game in. I don't care. I don't care how well the Capital One guy hits. Gonna be honest with you. I would much rather see an inning of Jackson Wiggins than some of these guys. So I'm a little bummed out about that. I get jazzed about the futures game. And so Wiggins will pitch in that. It seems like it's load management. He still hasn't pitched. I wouldn't be surprised if he gets a game this week and then he gets the inning next week. They're kind of, I think they're trying to relax these guys. Jackson Wiggins has already pitched more innings in 2024 than he did in 2025 than he did in 2024. So it's July. He's still got 3 months to go. The Cubs cannot. They don't want to hurt these guys. He's throwing 100 miles an hour. He looks like he's the next big Cubs pitching prospect. You don't want to get him hurt. So he's been taking some load management time. I think he's going to be just fine. Will Sanders is a name who took some time on the development list. He hadn't pitched since the 18th of June. And he again took time on what's called the developmental list. If you're not super in tune with minor league baseball, they have a special list in the minors called the development list. It's basically a list you can put a pitcher on, usually a pitcher, and set them off to the side. They're not taking up a roster spot for you anymore. It's not an IL, so they don't have to follow the same IL rules, but you're basically saying, hey, I'm going to take this guy, and he needs some work in our pitch lab. He's going to go down to Arizona. He's going to work with some folks. We'll bring him back in a little bit. So Will Sanders was on the developmental list. He came back off of it, and he threw a start last week. He went 5 innings, struck out 5, walked 2. I thought probably his best start at AAA so far. Interesting to look at it. So, from a developmental list, you kind of wonder, okay, what did he do? What's different? And it wasn't like he came back throwing a lot harder. He's somebody who he probably sits like 92 to like 94 on his like average fastball. He can hit 95 on his upper end. But he's kind of like a kitchen sink pitcher. When you go on a StatCast, it's like he threw like 30 fastballs and he threw 9 splitters and he threw 7 sliders and he threw 5 sinkers and he threw 4 curveballs and he threw 2 of these. He'll throw like 6 pitches some of the times. And then you'll look at his next game and he didn't throw a single splitter, but this time he threw more curveballs and then he worked in a sweeper. He's kind of like a kitchen sink guy. And when I went and I looked at his game when he came back, he threw 4 pitches, which is not usually what StatCast is picking up. So I kind of wonder if they sat him down, they went to the developmental list and was like, hey, we got to pick some pitches, bud. It's cool to have a lot of pitches, but if we're not working on anything specific, then we're not really growing on any of them. So I kind of like looked at his pitch mix and it was a little bit different than what he's gone with. He's a little bit more heavy on things. So I think maybe that's what they were working on. I'm just guessing. I don't have any information on that. Overall, Will Sanders kind of reminds me a little of like Colin Ray, as like a kitchen sink kind of guy, can throw like 94, 95. I don't think he's going to wow you, but you can put him in the bullpen probably down the road. He could be a decent 5 starter. I don't think he's super special, but him being good in AAA is going to allow you to talk about things like if the Marlins are interested in moving Edward Cabrera, who's been crushing it lately. And I brought him up before. I really like Edward Cabrera. And they're saying, well, if we're going to give up Cabrera, we want Ben Brown and Owen Casey. Well, if you have somebody like Will Sanders who is making some progress, you can maybe throw him in a game if you needed to at the major league level. You'd be a little bit more willing to trade a Ben Brown at the deadline, in case of an injury. I wouldn't be surprised if Jordan Wicks is up for a little bit of a showcase as well. I've got an article that'll come out the next day or so on Wicks. Wicks looked pretty good on Sunday. And I know
I like that Council took him out in the 9th with like one or 2 outs, and he got a nice little standy no. That was cool.
He had a nice.
I thought he looked really damn good.
Yeah, he did, and he threw way different. I won't. I'm not gonna
spoil it.
I'm not gonna spoil the article, but let me tell you, I was surprised at how he used some of his pitches. It was not the way that he used to. He's definitely a different kind of guy, and I was really impressed with it. So, I know it's minor league report, but he's kind of still involved in that. We've got one more arm, and it's an arm that I think is kind of a prospect sicko arm. It's kind of an interesting one, and I wouldn't be surprised if he is thrown in a deal. Just to make kind of a comparison, last year when the Cubs traded for Isaac Paredes, people kind of tune in on 2 of those names in that deal. The first was Christopher Morel. He'd been on the major league roster. Everybody kind of knew him. And then Hunter Biggie was the other one, reliever. He pitched a little bit with the Cubs. He had a great end with the Rays last year. Has been kind of up and down throughout the year this year. But they forgot that there was a third name in that deal. And it was Ty Johnson. And Ty Johnson, to this date, since that trade, probably has been the best player that they acquired. He's blowing up in the minors right now. And I'm okay with it. Listen, the trade ended up getting Kyle Tucker eventually. Yes. So like, it's okay. Like, I'm not mad about it. Kind of like I'm not mad that we gave up Zaire Hope to get Michael Busch. Okay, listen, you give up quality to get quality. That's just what it is. If the Cubs get Edward Cabrera, expect that we're going to give up names that hurt, and you're going to feel, ouch, that sucks. But that's what good trades are. Good trades kind of hurt both sides because we're not playing video games. We're not getting, I can't put the forced trades on. But if you want my Ty Johnson name right now, keep an eye on Tyler Schlafer. He's a little older, but he has been cruising through South Bend. He just got a bump to Knoxville. Had an okay start in his first start, but he kind of feels like he could be your Ty Johnson this year. A guy who gets put in a trade and you immediately go, and you kind of just like wave him off, right? We do a trade with the Marlins. We do a trade with the Diamondbacks. We get back, Eugenio Suarez or Merrill Kelly, and they trade Alcantara, and they trade some like low level IFA guy, and then they throw in Tyler Schaefer. You're like, who cares about Tyler Schaefer? And then next year you look and you're like, oh, he's actually doing really good in Iowa. He kind of has a feeling of maybe being that guy. So he's been cruising. He bumped up. And then we'll finish it off with one hitter, Jefferson Rojas, who had another really good week. He's starting to bump up prospect lists. He's been starting to hit top 100s. He is a very good player, had a 170 WRC plus, controls the zone really well, struck out 18% of the time last week, hit another home run, hit another double. He's very, very young for his level. I believe he's just 20 years old still, and just turned 20, like 20 years and 2 months. And he is up at South Bend. He's been 37% better than league average. He's hit 7 home runs this year. Last year, only 6 at the same level. So he is repeating, but he's so much younger than those levels that we can just kind of ignore that. I really don't care. He's increased the isolated slugging ×2. So he's double the power this year. He's getting bigger. He's listed as a shortstop. Not quite certain he's going to stay as a shortstop. I think maybe third base. He's going to kind of grow out of it a little bit. But if you're looking for like the next like maybe potential like big ceiling prospect, Jefferson Rojas is probably the guy. Especially once we lose some of these guys, and then we head into draft season, which is just like a week away until draft season. I'm excited about it. I'm kind of interested to see what they do. I've heard a couple cool things, kind of back end stuff from some folks that I know about the draft, which I'm getting excited about. Nothing I can really talk about too much. But I'm excited about it. And the Cubs kind of have an interesting way of drafting. That there seems to be like a theme every year. Last year it was like exit velocity and guys who hit at the Cape. The year before it was like, hey, are you a pitcher? We drafted you. So they kind of have these like cool themes. I'm kind of interested to see what they do in the first round this year. There are a couple of guys that I like, a couple prep shortstops I like, high school shortstops who I think the Cubs might be interested in. They get connected with the next Trey Turner pretty often. Last year, this year, there's a couple of guys who fit that mold. Steele Hall is one of them. Daniel Pierce is another. There's a couple cool arms out there. Gage Wood is one of my favorite arms in the draft. He threw a no-hitter in the College World Series, has a lot of Cade Horton in him, coming from Oklahoma, had some injuries, big fastball, big College World Series. So it kind of reminds me a little bit of that. If you're okay with his shoulder impingement he had this year, I think picking at 17, he's probably top of my draft, but you have to be okay with his medicals. So excited about the draft. I know, minor league report isn't a little bit different than the draft, but these guys are going to go in the minor league report. Probably as soon as like August. So I'm excited about the draft. We do have, for anybody who's out there listening, we're going to have some live draft coverage on the website where we'll have like a tracker and kind of some immediate reactions and articles. So definitely keep your eye out for that. It'll be the 13th. So a week from yesterday, this Sunday is draft day. So I'm pretty excited about it.
Yeah,
I
that'll
think
be
it's
sweet.
the 13th.
I got one question for you. It's kind of a random one, but maybe not so much. What does your gut tell you on when the trade deadline comes and goes? Will the Cubs have completed a trade that includes Owen Casey going to another team?
I think so. I wrote an article last week about names to kind of like watch.
Yeah,
and I cheated on my first one because it's not a name; it's 2 names. I would say it is a big, and I don't mean this like I'm hoping that one of these guys get traded, but I would say it's an upset if the Cubs keep both Casey or Alcantara, Casey and Alcantara.
Okay,
so they're going to give up one of them, one or the other. And I think when you look at this deadline, the Cubs are going to have to make decisions, right? We don't want a prospect horde to the point where they don't have any value anymore. When we think of prospects, we have to think of them as money. In the sense that you can use that money a couple of ways. You can use that money to infuse talent into your major league team, like immediately, like Pete Crow Armstrong, Matt Shaw, like these types of things, right? They come up. Cade Horton, they come up. But we also have to look at prospect value elsewhere. They can be used to buy talent. And you can use it to buy. That's where Kyle Tucker comes from, right? Kyle Tucker comes because we took prospects, Michael Busch, the same way. You take prospects, you buy something that's major league ready right now. And I think the Cubs are going to have to make some decisions because they only have so many places to play these guys. Casey and Alcantara are both outfielders, and at best next year they're going to have one space in the outfield. Right? They're going to have one space.
Hopefully not.
If they don't, hopefully none. But at best,
not a shot at Casey. Or we're saying
no.
Hopefully
Kyle
not, because that means Tucker's gone.
Yeah, Kyle Tucker's like the reality is that I love Owen Casey more than almost anybody. I've been on his. I like this 2020 draft, and he's not going to be as good as Kyle Tucker, almost assuredly. So I'd rather keep Kyle Tucker. But if the Cubs are only going to have one outfield place, maybe next year, you can't have both of them. At some point, these guys have to be used, and having two outfielders in Iowa only doesn't really do you much. You got to get something out of it. So I think one of those guys go. I think one of Ballesteros and Long will go. I think you kind of have to say, and I know people don't like hearing it, but when we talk Moises Ballesteros, if you do not believe he is a major league catcher, then he is very tradable. He's very tradable. He doesn't hit enough power to be like, oh, he's a surefire DH. It's very hard to be a good DH. I mean, we're talking about Seiya Suzuki, who is like absolutely crushing the baseball. And there are two DHs who are better than him already. And if you just look at major league average DH, it's impossible to be really good there. It's very hard to be good there, especially if you're only going to hit 20 home runs. Now, if you think Moises Ballesteros is a 75 game catcher, then yeah, you don't trade him. But if you don't, then all of a sudden Jonathan Long and Moises Ballesteros have a lot of kind of crossover. They're both in that like 18 to 25 home run range. They're both mostly first base DH. So then you have to say, well, I don't need two of them. I need one of them. So maybe I find a team, maybe the Minnesota Twins, who have no real future at catcher, are interested in moving Joe Ryan for Moises Ballesteros. And like that's a start of a framework. And then they believe he's a catcher. So I think there's going to be some ifs and ands and buts and ors when the Cubs are sitting down. And I think they're going to basically have to make a couple of decisions. Like one of Owen Casey or Kevin Alcantara is probably going to get traded. I think one of Moises Ballesteros or Jonathan Long is going to get traded. And I think they're going to have to make some of these decisions moving forward. I think, when we talk about pitchers, Brandon Birdsell, Javier Assad, Will Sanders, this kind of like back end, Jordan Wicks probably in there as well. I think you have to kind of say, okay, like one or two of these guys need to go. And, I know Assad's been kind of hurt and so is Brandon Birdsell, but if I'm a team who's bad, whatever, if the medicals check out, they're both back end free, younger, controllable pitchers. So I think there's going to be buckets of players, and the Cubs are going to basically say, like, you can have one of these guys, you can have one of these guys, you can have one of these guys. And then, then there's the kind of everybody else where it's like, oh, I think, if a trade happens and a team's demanding Ryan Gallagher or like Riley Martin, you're like, whatever, throw him in, let's get the deal done. But, I think these major buckets it's going to be kind of like a one or the other. Where they're going to have to make decisions. I don't think they're going to be easy decisions unless you get a team who just comes in and loves one of these guys. And that's the big factor. Not to get too off topic here, but a few years ago, the Athletics traded Sean Murphy to the Braves in a weird trade where Estuary Ruiz was basically like the big return that they got. In that deal, it was a 3-team trade. It was the one where Wilson Contreras went to the Brewers, and then Sean Murphy ended up with the Braves. And the big prospect they got back was Estuary Ruiz from the Brewers, and a lot of people were very confused at that. I was very confused at that. I did not like Estuary Ruiz as a prospect at all. But to basically balance that out, you had to look at Ruiz and you had to say, that's a top 10 prospect in baseball. And if you believed he was a top 10 prospect in baseball, trade made perfect sense to you. And, we've seen, I didn't necessarily agree with Matthew Boyd and since I'm wrong all the time, but Oakland was super wrong on this one. Ruiz sucks. He's been terrible. And I think it was obvious his exit velocities were terrible. The weak hitter, all of his home runs came in like hitter ballpark, very friendly ballparks in AAA. But they were wrong on that. But if you get a team who looks at Jonathan Long and they're like, man, that guy's a top 25 prospect in baseball, I love Jonathan Long, then maybe you can get one of these trades that are like really, really, really good and favorable for you. But I think as long as teams are generally on the same kind of wavelength with a lot of these prospects, I think we're going to lose a couple guys. I think we're going to get some fun guys back.
100%.
My hunch is that they will get one starting pitcher who will be here longer than the
just this year
season.
Yeah. If you're giving up the names that they could potentially have to give up, I mean,
you'd hope so.
It sounds a little greedy, and you can't always thread that needle. But as a fan, I would like the best of both worlds. If you're giving up a KC or an Alcantara, I would like someone who's really good now, can contend with a Cubs team that has big postseason aspirations and has some good team control and is here for a couple of years down the road as well. So,
absolutely
fascinating. We'll have plenty of trade talk, I'm sure, in upcoming episodes. I do want to finish up. You brought his name up earlier. We have a third member of the podcast.
Yes, yeah. She normally leaves me alone because we record a little bit later in the day a lot of times. But as a teacher, I'm the only one home right now, so I'm full attention. So yeah, we've got a slight of an audience today.
Let's finish up talking about Daniel Palencia. Just kind of the base question of like, hey, how good is he? How good can he be? I think I was looking at his StatCast page, and first off, I love the fiery personality.
Oh yeah, me too.
That interaction, I'll call it, with Wilson Contreras a couple weeks ago, like I was like, okay, Palencia's a dog. Like I love this. Like I want this guy in our corner. I love Palencia. Like he didn't shy away from the moment. He didn't back down when Contreras was barking, and he let him hear it when he retired him. And yeah, I like the personality and sort of the edginess that he has. I think for his position too, if he is going to be, a full-time closer, I kind of like those guys who wear it on their sleeves sometimes. I know that can backfire in certain moments, but I just like that from Palencia.
I don't know if you're an NFL guy. I kind of think of the closer like the wide receiver in like where you kind of have to want it, right? You got to want the ball at that moment. And if we look at the NFL, a lot of these wide receivers, they're a bit of a diva. They have to have a me first mentality when you go out there, and it's always the wide receiver, right? It's George Pickens, it's CeeDee Lamb, it's AJ Brown, a big Eagles fan. AJ Brown, got a big personality. They have these big personalities, but I want my wide receiver to kind of be like that. I want to be a little selfish. Sometimes it creates an Antonio Brown situation where he's painting a fake helmet to match standards, and you're like reining in a little bit, please. But I like my closer to be like that a little bit too, right? You got to want the ball in the important situations, and when you get that ball, you got to kind of have that emotion. So yeah, I fully agree with you on that.
Yeah, I like Palencia is one of those guys. He wants to be out there for the last 3 outs. And to draw another comparison to your wide receiver thought, it's similar to some of the best wide receivers in the game, in AJ Brown, Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, guys like that. If it's 3rd and 6 and everyone in the building knows you're passing the ball, and everyone in the building knows you have a go-to guy, they still want you to throw him the ball. Like Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, they're telling their quarterbacks, like, hey, throw it to me no matter what. I'll go get it. I'll go get the ball. 3rd and 6, throw it to me.
One of my favorite AJ Brown quotes was, "I'm always open."
Right. Just throw it to
me, just like I'm always open, and it isn't. He wasn't necessarily saying I'm always like not being covered. It's basically like, you can throw it to me anytime. I'm gonna get that. I'm gonna get the football, right? I'm gonna do that, and having a closer who sometimes has to come in, if the 8th, if it's in the 8th inning, they have to get a 4-out save, and they've got 2 on and 2 out, that you're in a jam already, and they got to come in and they got to strike somebody out. Wanting that ball, I think, is kind of like that wide receiver position. So I like that Palencia feels that way, because I don't think we've had a guy like that in a while, where they wanted that ball, they have that emotion. I really like that about him.
Yeah,
I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah, I was looking at his StatCast page. He's missing barrels, his fastball velocity, at 99th percentile. I'm starting to believe in Palencia as the full-time closer more and more. He keeps getting those opportunities, that role. I think secondarily, a piece of this is the ego of Ryan Presley could have gotten away with where he's at in his career, the pitcher he has been in the past, when he had that closer role kind of pulled out from beneath him by the Cubs. And I think he, by all accounts, right, he's handled it pretty tremendously. Haven't heard much of a peep about, Ryan Presley's gonna suck it up and do what the Cubs ask, but he's not happy about it. Like, we haven't heard anything close to that, and nothing of the sort. So I do think him being able, athletes at that level, you have an ego. I mean, whether or not they want to admit it, they do.
Right.
And I think for him to be able to check his and still go out there for the Cubs, try to right his wrongs from really that one really bad appearance over a month ago against San Francisco, I think is big too. But for Palencia, I really like what I'm seeing. Like he's starting to check more and more and more boxes for me. I think at one point I was like, oh, Porter Hodge should be the closer, and then he got hurt, and Palencia, hey, opportunity came knocking, and he hasn't just opened the door and walked through. He's like, kicked the door in, and he's taken advantage of the close opportunity. So I'm wondering what your thoughts are on Palencia. It sounds pretty similar to me that I don't want to speak for you, but I'm starting to believe in him more and more. Would I like to see the Cubs add a bullpen arm? Yeah, sure, why not? But do I think they need to go out and get someone who, oh my gosh, we need someone who can come in the ninth inning and really shut the door and get 3 out? Like I'm good with Palencia right now, and I don't really see that wavering for me in the second half of the season.
No, I don't think so either. We can go back to his game in Miami, right? That's kind of when he first got his first save opportunity, blew it in that Miami game. But he's had 17 appearances, and if we take those 17 appearances and we kind of ignore everything else, he's striking out about 1 out of every 3 hitters, which is better than his season numbers. His season numbers don't kind of bear that out, and those numbers have gone way up. If we just cut out a couple of them, they go up a few more percentage points. He's getting better and better with his slider, and he's also getting better and better with the fastball. So I feel really comfortable with him. He's been fantastic. He's given up 2 barrels in that time period. 2 barrels. It makes sense. There is a correlation between velocity and missing barrels, right? If you throw 102, it's a lot easier to have guys not square you up than if you hit 96. And when traditionally we think 96, like, oh man, that guy's throwing gas. And nowadays you're like, Jordan Wicks hit 96 last night. And no shame to Jordan Wicks, but I don't think anybody has ever looked at Jordan Wicks and been like,
flamethrower,
fire. That guy brings the heat. He just doesn't. Daniel Palencia does, and he can get away with that. But his fastball placement has been so much better. He's kind of learned that, like, I need to throw this pitch up. And if we compare it to where he threw it last year, last year he was kind of stealing strikes with it. His fastball was kind of like, I'm just going to throw it down the middle and maybe you won't hit it. He's now kind of hitting that upper third pretty consistently with that pitch at 102, and that becomes a very difficult pitch to hit. Against lefties, he doesn't have as much to go for. He will throw the slider in on lefties. He's not super afraid to do that. But fastball is really his game. I'm fairly comfortable with him at this point. I think we're trending to having like a very, very good closer. Many at this point, months ago, we were talking about Duran, and I mentioned that I kind of wanted like a closer with like a really cool song, and I feel like Palencia is the kind of guy who would do that, but also kind of fits that mold, right? He hits 102. He's got a lot of energy on the mound. Kind of brings a similar energy to that Adbert Alzolay did. He had that kind of same energy, but he didn't have the stuff, right?
Yeah,
Alzolay
Pedro Strop a little bit had that.
Pedro Strop, he's got it, and I really like what he's doing. The shape on his fastball is good. Stuff Plus loves this guy. I mean, he is a Stuff Plus monster. Stuff Plus loves his fastball. They love his slider. They love his shape. You add the velocity to it, and I think this is a guy, right? This is a guy, and he's got a lot of control. He's not going anywhere anytime soon. He's still at well under a year under of service time, so he's very, very well controlled into the future. I'm very excited about him. I definitely want to see him kind of get the bulk of the closing situations the rest of the year, and this could be our closer for the next 5 or 6 years, very realistically, with what he's doing. And I don't know if anybody remembers, but we got him for Andrew Chafin at the trade deadline. It was a trade where sent him to Oakland, and we got back Greg Diekman, AAA outfielder, who it was second round pick. He was coming out of LSU. Looked like he could maybe be a platoon like outfielder DH type. Didn't really make it. And then Palencia down in like low A. They plucked him, and it's actually probably not as crazy as you think, because Dan Kantrovitz had been in the Oakland Athletics system That's
Okay.
where we hired him from. And then we made a trade specifically for Daniel Palencia. So I would guess inside knowledge on that one from Dan. If I had to guess, that sounds like if Dan handles a lot of the amateur draft side of things. That's his real specialty. But I would be shocked if they didn't look at him in that draft and was like, "Hey, Dan, who do you like?" So yeah, Palencia's been awesome.
Yeah, he's been great. Hopefully see him on the mound a couple more times. That would mean the Cubs are, in all likelihood, trying to close out a win before the All-Star
Yes.
break. 6 on the road, 3 against the Twins, and then 3 against the Yankees, who, man, after salvaging what would have been a sweep at the hands of the New York Mets, they picked up a win, but they have been sputtering big time lately. As of the Twins kind of, roller coaster ride that's starting to go on a downward trajectory. So that's how the first half finishes up for the Cubs. 3 against the Twins at Target Field, 3 against the Bronx Bombers in New York. He is Jason Ross. I am Mitch Woodmeyer. This has been the Northside Baseball Podcast. Always appreciate you guys for tuning in. We'll see you next week.